Mary, did you know? And I'm sure that many of you have heard that as well. And it's kind of a sad little song about whether Mary was aware of what would transpire in the life and ministry of Jesus. And it talks about the ways in which Jesus moved through Judea and Galilee, healing the sick, encouraging the broken, bringing forgiveness to those who felt they were lost, and bringing a sense of relationship to those who felt they were alone. Mary, did you know? All of this began in a little place called Nazareth. It was in the province of Galilee, which is the north part of the Holy Land. It's a nondescript place. Nobody really knew much about Nazareth, but when people who were politically astute and powerful heard that Jesus came from there, they said, "Can any good thing come from Nazareth?" And so it was not held in high esteem by the powers of Jesus' day. But it began in Nazareth. Can you think that Mary and Joseph in that small village, as we prepare to celebrate the birth of Christ, were aware of the sequence of events that would take place over a period of years? It began in a nondescript place called Nazareth, and it came to fruition in a place of great renown, not only in Jesus' day, but even in today's world, called Jerusalem, where, from the Gospel according to Luke, the crucifixion took place. It began in a place called Bethlehem, a little place that has absolutely no claim to fame other than it was the birthplace of the Christ. And it took place in a cave, my friends. I have seen that place. It's just a hollowed out space in a hillside where, before the birth of Jesus, the innkeeper housed his animals, his cattle, his sheep, whatever. And there is where the babe was born. Who would have thought that out of that place called Bethlehem, Jesus would travel throughout in his adulthood Judea and Galilee and make his way to Jerusalem, where he would be tried and convicted and hung on a cross. Who would have ever thought that this young man born in Nazareth would somehow come to the attention of the religious leaders of his day to such a degree that they felt they had to get rid of him? He was so disruptive in terms of their thinking that they could not find a place for him and what he had to say and share as God's message to the world. And so those religious leaders did their very best to convict him of a phony crime so that they could get rid of him. Friends, it's interesting when you think about those soldiers at the foot of the cross. They sort of reflected the mood of the day, all except one. One on the cross and one on the ground. Remember the account? The soldiers were there to make sure that nobody interfered with the crucifixion. They were casting lots, rolling the dice at the foot of the cross to get whatever garments Jesus had been wearing during that whole process. I can't imagine that they were garments of great value, for he was a Galilean. He was a very simple man. He was not used to dressing up in fine garb and trying to impress people with how he looked. He was simply a man who had a message to deliver to the world. And yet those guards were there rolling the dice to see who would get what part of the clothing that Jesus had. As he hung on that cross, all he had was a loincloth. They were there when the nails were driven into his hands. They were there when that cross was lifted over the hole into which it would be inserted. And they were there when that cross fell into that hole in a jarring reality. They were there at the foot of the cross. One of the thieves standing with him, crucified with him, mocked him, as did most of the soldiers and the people around him. of those thieves saw something different. One of those thieves saw in this one a chance for redemption. And if you will recall, as the story unfolds, another one of those guards at the foot of the cross who had been rolling the dice at the time of his death said, truly this was the Son of God. We live in a world that has trouble even now understanding the message of the Christ. Think about it. Traveling on a short time, 3 years was his adult ministry, traveling throughout Galilee and Judea, sharing the good news of God's grace, God's love, and God's mercy. And yet that message has resounded generation after generation after generation. What was it about those 3 years and the lives that he touched that somehow was transforming and renewing and had the power to kind of make its way through the ages right down to us right now? Friends, the gifts that Jesus brought to the world because God had commissioned him and equipped him are as necessary in our lives today as they have ever been. The good news for us is that the cross, of course, was not the final say. Even though the world thought that it had disposed of this revolutionary. And do not mistake it, friends. This message is revolutionary. It turns the values of this world upside down. It confronts people who are so concerned about power and wealth and position and influence. It turns them on their heads if they see it, if they hear it, and take it seriously. What did Jesus say in the face of all of this persecution? He said, I am among you as a servant. I came not to be served, but to serve. I came to give myself away to you and for you, because that's what servanthood is all about. And what greater act of servanthood can be expressed than to give your life? Think about it, friends. This message that has endured for these many hundreds of years is still a message that people in this world are hungry and thirsty to hear and receive. But it has to come into one's heart if it's going to transform and change you. We don't know what that soldier at the foot of the cross had experienced as he confessed, truly this is the Son of God. But something had happened. Some transforming power had touched his life in such a way that he could not participate in what was happening at the foot of that cross. If you let your imaginations go just a little bit, I would imagine that while they were railing at Jesus and hurling taunts at him, he was silently contemplating, thinking about the meaning of all of this. What is God's purpose in this one who is hanging here on the cross? And what does it mean to me? And what difference could it mean to the world in which I live? But friends, those are the very same questions that we want to ask ourselves as we contemplate the life and the ministry of Jesus. The fact that he gave himself as a ransom for many. He did not hold himself back. He gave himself freely. And why? Because he wants each and every one of us to experience the fullness of life. Not just to spend our days passing time. And so many in our world do that. Time just comes and goes over and over and over again without much of a purpose, without any sense of direction, without any real goal in mind. Jesus has encouraged us to step out of that kind of mentality, to step into a new way of life and a new way of existing with each other, to realize that this gift of time is a precious gift. And how we use our days really does matter. It's hard to imagine that 3 short years of ministry could have the impact on history and on the world that this life of Jesus had. 3 short years. How many years have all of us been alive? What's the impact? What is our life going to accomplish? What will we do with this gift so that the world will be a different place because we have been here? Is that not the challenge of the cross? Is that not the challenge of the Christ? That somehow elevating us to a point where we realize how significant this gift of life is. It's not to be squandered and wasted. It's not to be turned inwardly upon ourselves as if we're going to hoard it and secure our days, because we don't know what any day is going to bring. And so what will we make of this time that God has given us? Jesus, in those 3 short years of his earthly ministry, left us a legacy that is so powerful and so important for this world in which we live, that the more we embrace it, the more the world changes and becomes what God had hoped it would be from the very beginning. Each one of us does make the difference. Even as Christ made that difference in the life of that soldier at the foot of the cross. Even as Christ made that difference in the thief who was hanging beside him. So Christ makes that difference in each and every one of us. You know, life is more than rolling the dice. You know, it's meant to be a choice we make. Do we invite Christ into our lives in such a way that when we live each day, some part of us reflects how Jesus was in ministry and lived in his life? How many lives can we transform with the power of God at work in us and through us? A word, a deed. There are so many things that happen each and every day in every one of us. You know, we aren't all in the same spot every day. We go to different locations. We live in different homes. We live and move in different arenas. And yet if we go there as representatives of Jesus Christ, there will always be an occasion to make the gospel and good news known in some way. One of the things that's refreshing about this season of the year is that there are so many good stories out there. There really are. People do want to do what's right. People do want to celebrate goodness and share their lives with others. And there are many of those who do that. But they seem to be so spotty. One here, and one over there, and one over here. If we all took that opportunity, what would it mean to the world where we live? It's more than a roll of the dice, friends. It's a commitment to Jesus Christ. And it's a willingness to live one's life as a disciple of Jesus Christ. God sent Christ into the world for a purpose. Mary had no idea that what happened in Nazareth would end up in Jerusalem. Mary had no idea that what took place in the stable in Bethlehem would end up on a cross outside the city. Mary, did you know? No, you didn't know. But thank God that God had a purpose and a plan for the life and ministry of Christ that has touched every one of us in some way. May we touch this world with the gift God has given us. We are going to move into the Advent season. We're getting ready for the birth. Let's make that birth real and powerful for our families and for all the people we meet. Now, if you're going on Black Friday, one of the things you can do is not shove someone else, okay? It's such a simple thing, isn't it? But to respect the people around you is more than just grabbing the latest item off the shelf. You're with other people who have value as well. Express that value in the way you live and live